this chart showing all the bills that we'll be entertaining and all the services that we have to provide. So as we eliminate some of those bills, we'll have to see what is left to fund all of those services. So please keep that in mind as we move forward, that there has to be something up there to fund all those services. Thank you, McKelly. Okay, the first item is Bill 34, amending the exemption for charitable purposes. Director Koyanagi.
For the record, Nelson Koyanagi, Director of Budget and Fiscal Services.
Gary Kurokawa, Deputy Director of Budget and Fiscal Services.
I guess as you can see from the chart, and happy birthday, McKelly. As you can see from the chart, there's going to be 10 property tax related bills today that are going to be up for discussion. 6 of them relate to exemptions, and back in 2011, the City Council established the Real Property Tax Advisory Commission, and the commission met and came out with a report, I think in January 2012, and the primary focus, although it was to look at the whole real property tax system, since that's such a large endeavor, they primarily focused on exemptions. So the 6 bills that are being discussed today take into consideration some of the recommendations and concerns that the advisory commission came up with. So I just wanted to point that out. Bill 34 is what Bill 34 does, and this is a recommendation by the commission, is to define a charitable organization as a 501c3 organization. By doing this, it makes it clear as to what is charitable. Right now, the way that the ordinance is written, it makes it very difficult to administer. Real Property Tax Division has a hard time sometimes to administer because the definition of charitable is pretty broad in the ordinance. So this Bill 34 tries to define that and make it so that charitable organizations will be totally exempt from taxation, basically paying the minimum tax, and certain other organizations may be paying an amount that's greater than or less than total exemption, but an amount. One of the things that the advisory commission mentioned was that the real property tax is basically to pay for services that are provided by the city, and the city provides a lot of services to all taxpayers. And I guess the commission felt that every taxpayer has an obligation to pay for these services. But they also recognize that some organizations, like charitable nonprofit organizations, provides a service to the community, and so they should get some kind of break. And so that's what this particular bill tries to accomplish.
Thank you. Any questions for the director? Yes, Councilmember Manahan.
Okay, before I do start my questions, also in the abundance of caution, I just got elected onto the Friends of High Sam board. So I will be filing that disclosure too. But I did want to ask a question as far as this bill, for Bill 34. And we discussed it briefly, I think, when we met, and thank you for meeting with me. How much are we trying to raise, I guess, with this bill? What is the price tag for this revenue enhancement, or how much money do you hope to generate?
The way the bill is structured right now, there is, for those that are not 100% exempt, there's a blank percentage. And there's no actual dollar amount that we're looking to attain, from this particular exemption. It's just saying that those that are not 501c3s and belong to a certain group will pay a certain percentage of their assessed value more than the minimal tax. And there is really no dollar amount that we're trying to achieve by doing this.
So is this, would this, but this is a revenue generation then measure, or is it just, are we just doing housekeeping, or?
This is more of a, if you read the Advisory Commission's report, this is more of an equity measure where every organization, or every taxpayer that receives services from the city should pay something. And that's what this bill tries to achieve.
And so the new amendment that repeals the previous ordinance, which exempted property leased by a nonprofit, could you explain a little bit the amendment? Just to clarify, for the nonprofits, maybe.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Is the, well, one of the issues I believe in my notes to consider would be that there is a new amendment that repeals a previous ordinance which exempts property leased by a nonprofit.
No, that provision is still in there, that if you have a lease and you have a recorded lease, you can still, have an exemption. It's not repealing that section. Okay.
Okay.
What it's basically doing is taking the exemptions within our charitable nonprofit today and clarifying that those would be 501c3s, and those that are not 501c3s, and that might include some other properties that are nonprofits but maybe not charitable, will not be able to get this exemption. Okay. They would have to be 501c3s.
Okay.
There's also where the unions and the credit union leagues portion of this exemption will now not be 100% exempt, and that's where there's a blank percentage for assessment for those particular parts. So those were unions and credit union leagues.
Are you looking for a particular number or no?
No.
For that percentage?
We're just trying to, determine that the 501c3s are 100%, and the credit union leagues and the unions are something, less than 100% exempt.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for your.
Councilmember Fukunaga.
Thank you. I guess for Mr. Kurokawa, you noted that you don't have a specific amount that you're seeking to generate from this particular measure. But when we try to evaluate who would be covered and who would not be covered, by the scope of this restriction, does your department have a listing that could be provided to the council members and to the committee of, say, organizations that are currently nonprofit organizations who would not otherwise be eligible? One of the testifiers who has submitted written testimony, I don't know whether this testifier is here today, has included a listing of exempt property owners, which includes a listing of quite a number of churches and healthcare organizations. So, I guess what we would really be interested in learning more about is the intended scope of the change, and what that might mean in terms of impacts upon those organizations' services, which would help us then evaluate how this particular change might be structured.
Just to give you a brief, example of what this will be doing, there's approximately 1,600 exemptions in this charitable nonprofit category. If some of the ones that we identified by group, there's about 33 that are getting the exemption today that might be excluded because they're not 501c3s. There's about 33 The taxes associated with that would be about maybe $651,000 for those 33. There's also, if I look at my notes here, when we talk about the unions and the credit union league, maybe like about 46 parcels would be involved out of the 1,600. And basically, their exemption today that they're receiving is about $124 million in property exemption. I mean, if you look at the scope, so out of the 1,600, that's what we, can identify right now that might be affected. But, depending on the percentage, then their taxes would, would be different, yeah. I mean, they wouldn't be 100% exempt. We're talking about these 46 properties would be on a percentage basis. The 33 properties would be removed from the charitable nonprofit because they're not 501c3s. So,
Could we still obtain a
yes,
copy
yes,
of
we'll
written
get you more
list?
detailed information, but just as an overview,
Okay.
that's what we're looking at.
Okay.
And just as a clarification to this particular section of the ordinance, exempts certain organizations, for example, schools, and we're not changing that, so.
Churches.
Schools, churches, et cetera. So even if they're not 501c3, they would be exempted because of the specific exemption in this particular section of the ordinance.
Right, and so to the extent it, makes sense to narrow the scope of the nonprofit exemption, I guess the question I'm following up on, from Councilmember Monahan's questions are, who are those, what are the categories of other kinds of 501c3 organizations, and, what would be the impact of the change there? So at least the council has some idea of, what the impact will be, both on particular classifications of entities, so that, it's possible to make a reasonable determination as to whether or not that change should occur. And if it does occur, what should the appropriate percentage be?
Okay.
Thank you.
When you say schools, does that include private schools or just,
They're all still
Oh,
exempt,
okay.
yes.
any further questions? Okay, thank you. Natalie Iwasa.
Thank you, Natalie Wassa, for the record. As I've stated before, nonprofit organizations is a very complex area, and as we look at this particular bill, it states that we're looking at exemptions for charitable purposes, but business leagues, credit unions, labor unions, government employee associations, associations of the leagues of credit unions, those are not charitable organizations. They fall under a different code in the IRS, and they also have different, they're more liberal with those organizations. They're allowed to lobby, and they have certain other things that they are allowed to do, whereas charitable organizations are not. So I support the intent of this bill, and specifically reducing the exemptions for the non-charitable type of organizations. What I would recommend is several things on this particular bill. We just went through the grants and aid law and the definition of what is included in grants and aid. I would suggest keeping that definition consistent with this, because we're already working with that definition, and why make it clouded? Second thing is, if you're going to include that definition, I think you can get rid of a lot of this other stuff with respect to the schools and junior colleges, child care centers, hospitals. Those types of organizations should already, most of them anyway, would be in the charitable definition of charitable organization. So we can simplify this bill by doing that. And then the other thing is, I guess that was it, actually, to simplify it, and then actually take a look at splitting the bill, because the charitable organizations, more people would support giving them a higher exemption, whereas these other organizations, I think it's easier to have a lower exemption.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Iwasa? Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on Bill 34? Yes, please come forward.
Aloha, I'm Holly Huber. I submitted extensive written testimony on this. I have done extensive research on charitable exemptions, and this bill is very confusing, and it needs to be rewritten so that it is clear that it is only affecting 501c3s, that only 501c3 organizations should receive a complete exemption. I understand your questions. There's nothing in this bill that really clarifies some of the questions that you're asking. Our property tax exemption ordinance has no distinctions currently about all the different types of nonprofits. The IRS has 28 different categories of 501cs, okay? 501c3s are, of course, the nonprofit that we all think of, the food bank, the homeless shelter, and they certainly deserve the greatest exemption. Currently, they get a full exemption. They pay the minimum property tax, but so do business organizations, real estate boards, private groups, for example, the Elks Club with their beachfront property. All those groups also get the same exemption as a homeless shelter, as a food bank, and that is incorrect. If you look through my testimony, you'll see that there is a wide variety of 501c organizations, and that should be incorporated. I disagree completely with Mr. Kurokawa's assessment that only 33 properties would be affected. I think there are a lot more that are 501c4 organizations that would lose their property tax exemption under this, and absolutely should. As we have heard recently with the IRS tax exempt scandal, 501c4s oftentimes are completely political and organized only to support their own narrow interests and their own members. There's no way they should get the same exemption.
Thank you. Any questions for Holly Huber?
Aloha.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to testify on Bill 34? Okay, members, we do have a posted proposed CD1, and for your information, the amendments are listed on the agenda. It corrects formatting and Ramsar errors. What we'll probably do is, and if you would consider this, just moving things along, and then, because it would be second reading, and then we can refine after that. But before second reading, we'll try to get the information. Okay, so Chair's going to recommend that Bill 34 be amended to a CD1. Oh, yes. Councilmember Manahan.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate, before you make your recommendation, I appreciate what the administration is trying to do here, but as a voting member on this potential revenue increase on, our nonprofits, I'd like to know the impact, particularly, as Councilmember Fukunaga mentioned, on the different types of nonprofits that are listed in the bill. I think that would be very helpful as far as making a decision as we move this bill forward. But also at this point, I would also like to disclose that I am a member of a credit union, and I will be filing those disclosures.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Chair is going to recommend that Bill 34 be amended to a CD1. Any discussion? Any objections? Okay, the bill has been amended to a CD1, and I also, as I said earlier, filed a disclosure on all of the bills. The Chair then recommends that Bill 34, CD1, be reported out for second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion? And we'll be sure to get as much information as we can about who this bill affects and the amounts. Any further discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, so ordered. Moving on to agenda item number 5, Bill 35, initiating the cancellation of the real property tax exemptions for historic commercial real property dedicated for preservation. Budget Director?
Bill 35 is another exemption bill, and basically what it's doing is eliminating the exemption to historical commercial properties.
How many are there?
At this point in time, there's 7 properties, and taxes for for those 7 properties is about $330,000. But again, this is not a revenue-generating bill. It's more of looking at the whole system.
Yes. Councilmember Manahan.
Again, I'd like to disclose again that I just got onto the board of the Friends of HISAM. I just wanted to know if this would affect state buildings, or are these private buildings, private commercial,
These are
historical?
private commercial buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions for the director? Okay, thank you.
One follow-up question.
Oh, yes. Oh,
My
excuse me.
apologies.
Councilmember
Little slow here.
Fukunaga.
Of the 7 properties, have all of these properties exemptions been sought within the last 10 years, or are the exemptions of a much more long-standing nature?
I think they're all within the last 10 years. This exemption is fairly new.
I see. So what was the original purpose behind the exemption if it was adopted within the last 10 years?
I believe, it was to, what they get from the city is a 50% reduction in the assessment. What they do is file a maintenance plan to upkeep the building at the Bureau of Conveyance, and then with that, they file the exemption with us. But I think it was to assist because of the maintenance of the building.
I see. So the incentive was really to preserve existing historic properties and to provide an incentive to encourage people to
Yes.
do that. So this would eliminate that incentive in favor of perhaps tearing it down and otherwise utilizing the property for other purposes. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you. Let's see. Kirsten Faulkner.
Good morning, Chair Kobayashi, members of council. I'm Kirsten Faulkner, Executive Director of Historic Hawaii Foundation. Historic Hawaii is a nonprofit organization. We are a 501c3, and our mission is to preserve and encourage the preservation of properties that are important to the history of Hawaii. And I guess I did submit written testimony. I'm not going to read that to you, but I did want to hit some highlights. As Member Fukunaga just mentioned, Council passed this tax exemption for historic commercial properties actually in 2004. It took a few years for the department to pass the rules and the forms and the procedures. So we really didn't see commercial properties enrolling in the program until about 2007, 2008. It was still kind of in that testing period. And what we found was the low-hanging fruit came in first. You know, it was the iconic buildings that everyone thinks of, mostly in the downtown area. Since then, there's been an effort to start to reach out to more of the Main Street communities, Haleiwa, Kailua, Chinatown, you know, the smaller property owners who don't really have the same sophistication or resources. So we're really in that period of how can this measure from City Council really support historic properties so that they can invest in and capitalize and really make sure that these iconic places that are so much a part of our history and our character and our communities can be retained for future generations. 7 properties so far, a minuscule amount of revenue being lost in the grand scheme of things, but really an important way to offer that incentive and offer that alternative to demolition or subdivision or neglect that is so very important. So Historic Hawaii Foundation urges you to keep this incentive program. We believe it's working. It's still in that proving stage. The tax commission report that was mentioned earlier actually doesn't recommend repealing this one. This one is recommended as it's working, please keep it. So that's our recommendation as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Natalie Iwasa.
Thank you, Natalie Iwasa, for the record. I think it's important for people to understand, I'm sure you all do, but maybe others who are listening don't understand that these exemptions cost taxpayer money, and the cost is nowhere to be found. It's something that has to be calculated by the Department of Budget and Fiscal Services. However, this particular one, we were just told, costs us about $300,000 per year. And if the goal is now to add more properties, the cost to taxpayers is going to go up. I support the reduction of exemptions for these types of properties, and I ask you to look at the exemption for historic properties for residential properties. That's one of the most generous subsidies that is provided in the U.S., if not the most generous. So that's actually where a lot more of the cost comes into taxpayers, and I ask you and the administration to take a look at that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Iwasa? Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on Bill 35?
Aloha, my name is Holly Huber. I agree with Natalie. I do actually oppose this bill just because you're being so hypocritical. If you allow that overly generous historic homes exemption, which you just approved recently, then there's no way that you should say we don't want to preserve our commercial buildings, which, unlike the historic homes, actually pay considerably more in property tax and are visible and accessible to the public. So you either support preservation or you don't, or perhaps it's that you support the wealthy historic homeowners who are getting an incredible break. If they were required to pay 50% of their assessed property tax, then that certainly would be a lot more fair. But to take away this exemption from commercial properties is hypocritical.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Huber? Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on Bill 35? Okay, members, we do have a posted CD1 to Bill 35. It amends the deadline for petitions to dedicate from September 1st, 2013 to September 30th, 2013, specifies that existing dedication shall end at the end of the term of the dedication and corrects formatting errors. So the chair is recommending that Bill 35 be amended to a CD1. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the bill has been amended to a CD1. The chair then recommends that Bill 35 CD1 be reported out for second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, Bill 35 CD1 is reported out for second reading. Moving on to Bill 36, adjusting the amount of certain real property tax exemptions. Let's see. Director Koyanagi.
Bill 36 is another bill that looks at exemptions, but this one is for the exemptions for credit unions. The Tax Advisory Commission recommended a full repeal of this exemption. However, this bill puts a percentage in there, or leaves a space for a percentage.
Any questions for the director? Okay, thank you. Dennis Tanimoto, President of Hawaii Credit Union League.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, council members, I am Dennis Tanimoto, President of the Hawaii Credit Union League, the trade association for 77 Hawaii credit unions, 49 of which are domiciled on Oahu. As stated in my written testimony, the credit unions of Oahu strongly oppose Bill 36 and the 2011 Real Property Tax Advisory Commission recommendation to repeal or reduce the real property tax exemption for credit unions. Credit unions are not-for-profit, member-owned cooperatives that provide affordable financial services to members who are primarily working-class citizens and retirees. Similar to nonprofit health care agencies that provide medical wellness to their patients, nonprofit credit unions provide financial wellness to 547,000 members of Oahu credit unions and 804,000 credit union members throughout the state. Unlike what the Real Property Tax Advisory Commission calls traditional for-profit financial institutions, nonprofit credit unions can only serve a limited field of membership of occupation, association, or well-defined local community with a limited, narrow array of products and services. Furthermore, credit unions have no access to supplemental capital like traditional financial institutions do, and each credit union is run by a volunteer board of directors, democratically elected by member owners under a democratic one member, one vote concept with no proxies. Credit unions are structurally unique, well accepted, and regulatory restricted in the financial services marketplace. To say the real property tax exemption gives them a competitive advantage over traditional for-profit financial institutions is simply not accurate. As evidence, credit unions do not enjoy, as evidence of credit unions not enjoying a competitive advantage over traditional financial institutions, let me give you this one example. The state's newest and smallest bank was chartered in mid-2006, and in a mere 7 years has amassed nearly $99 million in total assets. That is more than 79% of Hawaii's 77 credit unions, many of which were chartered over 75 years ago. To put this in perspective, the median-sized credit union on Oahu has less than $34 million in assets, about one-third that of the state's smallest bank. In summary, the original justifications for credit unions' real property tax exemption, their structure, purpose, and public benefit have remained unchanged over the years. Credit unions are nonprofit cooperatives owned entirely by their members who derive benefits in the form of lower rates on loans, lower fees on services, and higher rates on deposits. Therefore, a tax on a credit union is actually a tax on its members. The timing of this proposed tax couldn't be worse, as these are financially challenging times for credit unions and their members. We respectfully ask that the existing real property tax exemption for credit unions be left unchanged. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on this critically important matter.
Any questions for Mr. Tanimoto? Okay, thank you. Natalie Iwasa.
Thank you, Natalie Wassa, for the record. If there is any exemption that should be easy to remove, it's this one. And I say that because credit unions are competing directly with banks. I went to the National Credit Union Administration website, and there you can get a lot of information on credit unions. You can get specific credit unions or summary information. And basically, credit unions, while in the past they helped low-income and moderate-income customers, banks are actually providing more of those services to those types of customers than the credit unions are. Also, I sent in some written testimony and provided an example of what can happen in the board of directors and how these the funds are not necessarily spent in the best interest of the members. But basically, we're subsidizing this group of credit unions, and they have giveaways and other funds that I don't think that taxpayers should be subsidizing. They have better fringe benefits. They're spending lots of money on marketing, and I just feel like this is an exemption that we should take away. It's costing us $1.5 million per year. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Iwasa? Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on Bill 36? Please come forward.
Aloha, my name is Holly Huber, and I agree with Natalie. This should be the easiest exemption to get rid of. We've been through this before, and I have to disagree with Mr. Tanimoto that credit unions do get a considerable advantage over traditional banks. They are tax exempt. As a matter of fact, they're exempt from all taxes with the exception of local property taxes. This is the one tax that we can impose on credit unions. They have an incredible amount of property. We now have, they're constantly growing. If you look over the years, you'll see that we now have 80 exempt credit unions assessed at a total value of $150 million. Those numbers are a little misleading. We do, in fact, have 80 exempt credit unions, but the assessment of $150 million is probably a lowball figure because our real property assessment division does not usually bother to assess exempt properties. They don't update their assessments. They don't always assess changes. So it could be that that number should be considerably more. Just the simple math says that even with those lowball assessments, we're losing $1.8 million in property tax revenue. Now, the largest credit union, according to the Honolulu Star-Advertiser, has $1.2 billion in assets. The second largest credit union in the state has $1.19 billion in assets. These well-funded, members-only institutions can afford to pay their fair share. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Huber? Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to testify on Bill 36? Okay, Chair's going to, we do have a proposed CD1 which corrects formatting and reference errors. So Chair's going to recommend that Bill 36 be amended to a CD1. Any discussion? Councilmember Manahan.
Chair, I just, again, in the abundance of caution, I just want to say for all the bills, I did file my disclosure on the previous items I mentioned earlier, which are member of HISAM and member of a credit union. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have also filed my disclosure. Any further discussion? Any objections? Thank you. The bill has been amended to a CD1. The chair then recommends that Bill 36, CD1, be reported out for second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, so ordered. Bill 36, CD1 is reported out for a second reading. Moving on to Bill 37, changing the hotel and resort real property class to hotel, resort, and transient, and providing language defining such properties, classifying all real property used as such. And we do have a proposed CD1. This one restores the existing subsection 8-7.1, which refers to, I believe, timeshares that are in residential areas. And it amends the definition of fractional ownership to read, fractional ownership shall mean a parcel or portion thereof which at least two parties hold title to the property, and number two, entitles at least one owner-user to a specified interval of no less than 60 days in any year for the owner-user's exclusive use, and it also corrects formatting and Ramsar errors. Let's see. Director Koyanagi.
Okay. Gary Kurokawa, Deputy Director, Budget and Fiscal Services. Bill 37 is amending ROH Section 8-7.1 by changing the hotel and resort general land class to a hotel, resort, and transient. Basically, what we're doing is taking all the short-term in nature type of uses and putting it all within the general land class of hotel, resort, and transient. And this would include, the timeshares, TVUs, and the bed and breakfasts.
Okay. Any questions for the director? Okay, thank you. Oh, yes, Councilmember Menor.
You know, in looking at this bill and in the development and drafting of the bill, did the administration consider an alternative instead of lumping all of the transient accommodations into this one broad category to instead possibly create a separate category for those apart from the hotels?
Well, we have, later on another bill that, carves out timeshares separately from this group, from the hotel resort. But for this particular bill, it lumps all the similar uses of properties together with, TVUs. It's all on a short-term basis or put into this one category, regardless of, what type it is. It's actually by the use of the property.
Councilmember Fukunaga.
Thank you. Among the many testimonies that we have received on this measure, one of the email testimonies that I had received talked about how on the island of Maui, or I guess the county of Maui, there is a somewhat similar feature which would take short-term vacation rentals, typically B&Bs and other kinds of properties, and does impose a different tax differential. But the writer of that email indicated that the County of Maui had also instituted a different regulatory structure, which made this sort of a, the differentiation in tax was a logical outgrowth of the manner in which those properties were regulated. And so I guess my question would be to the department: has your department considered, identifying and regulating short-term vacation rentals as a corollary to the change in property tax designation or classification?
I think that, as far as the classification goes, it's just about the uses. We did not look at, alternate, bed and breakfasts and TVUs, allowing more or less of them to be regulated and to be affected in this class. This was just to set up all the same uses into one particular class, but it did not look at whether we should be allowing more regulation or licenses for other uses.
As a follow-up, though, it would seem that a legitimate concern that could be raised is that for those who are otherwise, paying the appropriate TAT, GET, and other taxes, and this would add, sort of an additional item that must be accounted for. One of the concerns that was being raised was that those who are not otherwise abiding by these kinds of requirements would go further underground, thereby really sort of creating an even greater proliferation of illegal activities rather than netting additional revenues. So I guess, how would your department enforce, in the instance if there is no regulatory framework other than the department's ability to regulate according to collection of property taxes?
Yeah, currently, the only way we would do that is we do have a list of certified B&Bs and TVUs, and that would be the only way we would be assigning these different classes. And it's not there to address any of the illegal uses that currently might exist. But there was a concern that was brought up before, and that, I think that needs to be addressed also. And that's something with Department of Planning and Permitting, actually, is the uses of these properties.
So is the Department of Planning and Permitting planning to introduce or come forward with any kind of legislation to supplement, what your department is proposing?
Not that we're aware of.
Thank you.
Chair Martin.
Actually, I don't have questions for the administration, but it's ironic that my colleague, Councilmember Fukunaga, would ask the line of questioning that she had initiated, because actually I came into, as part of discussion, but I might as well do it now, is actually going to recommend that we shelve this bill for exactly the concerns outlined by Councilmember Fukunaga. I think I had mentioned at the full council meeting when this came up for first reading that we were working on our own bills to address the very the concerns expressed by my colleague, Councilmember Fukunaga. My position is I think we need to create a separate property classification for transient vacation rentals and bed and breakfasts, because they are unique commodities with respect to the visitor industry that I think they shouldn't be lumped in with hotels and other similar classifications. Additionally, the issue of the potential, we have a underground market right now that's a very lucrative market, and by enacting a separate property tax classification for this particular accommodation would, to me, unduly penalize those who are complying with the law, and it's very hard for me to accept that. So I don't know, I really don't have any questions, but I thought I wanted to tell Councilmember Fukunaga that we are crafting our own two bills for both of those issues. And we will, of course, work with the administration. I think when they briefed us as to this particular package, that was a concern we expressed right from the get-go. I'm sure you guys can admit that we saw that this would make it very difficult for us to support this particular measure in this package of bills. So, McKinley, happy birthday. You can take 37 off the board. Thank you. Hello.
Because it will be replaced with another bill, is that correct?
Yes. We will submit our own bill.
Okay. Any further questions? Thank you. Norris Sandvold,
Yes.
please come forward, followed by Linda Martin.
Chair and members, I've got a lot of notes, and I sent in some written testimony to you, but basically, I have a cold. At my age, I'm surviving too, by the way. I've been involved for over 30 years in short-term rental homes, and our company it's a family business. We're active in what's happening in the world, especially since the introduction of the internet after the council in 1989 passed an ordinance limiting the number of people that could be short-term rentals. That number was something like 2,000. It's gone down every year, about 40 or so. So we have very few. In fact, there's a gentleman by the name of Mike Dixon who lives on the North Shore. He is teamed up. Thank you very much. I can still open them too. I limit myself to 1 drink a day. This is next Friday's. At my age, I think I can throw out a few little incidents that I've gathered over the years. But I did send you a packet.
Yes.
And included, my daughter-in-law, who is also involved, gave a little, says something about, enclosed you will find evidence to support short-term rentals. The state and city needs to get together and license people so they are assured to receive their GET and their TAT tax. This should be done before they think of raising property tax on where the majority will go underground and you won't be able to find them. I have been in the business for over 30 years and I understand what works. What works is getting aligned with what's happening in the real world. There's a company called HomeAway that was in the packet. Started, and I know the gentleman, in Austin, Texas, with gathered up something like 500 million venture capital, and he created the largest HomeAway company. He has bought out our website, and he's expanded all over the world. There's something like 600,000 short-term rentals, and he's done a lot of research on what a short-term rental is, and it's definitely not a hotel, and it's not a resort. So I really encourage you to look into the matter, because otherwise we're all going to lose. And just to sum it up, the state, when you come to this island or Hawaii, you fill out a report on ag. On the flip side is a category, where are you going to stay? In 2001, they added rental house, which we are. And it's gone from like 3% way up to, I talked to Daniel at the HTA, and they keep track of it every year, and it's tremendously gone up. So a lot of families that come here, 6 or more people, they prefer to stay in a short-term rental home. So as my wife would say, Norris can go by the way of Philadelphia to tell a story. Anyhow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? And as Chair indicated, we'll be replacing Bill 37 with another bill that'll probably be more to your liking. So
Well, I hope
when
so.
it's ready, it'll be posted. Thank you. Any further questions?
I have one comment.
Yes,
I
please.
believe that it's been a lot of bad news for people in certain areas of our island, the vocal minority. They've written to Bottom Line, they've written to Condé Nast, don't come to Hawaii and stay in, quote, illegal vacation home. So I think that this is a Hawaii
Thank
that
you.
we should be aligned with all the other counties and state, and we would be interested in increasing our property tax.
Thank
but
you.
Not to a hotel. 'Cause
Thank you.
we're neither. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Linda Martin, followed by W.M. Page.
Thank you. My name is Linda Martin, no relation that I know. I'm not sure why I'm testifying now. Bill 37's gone, but in structuring your new ones, perhaps you'll consider.
Sure.
My son and my daughter-in-law are both teachers, and as we all know, our teachers are pretty underpaid in this state, unfortunately. But they do have a small studio Ohana unit that is rented out as a TVU, and it's not the huge moneymaker that the house that Obama rents or any of the Kahala or the big Kailua Lanikai houses. It doesn't make that kind of money. And for them to pay any type of exorbitant, tax to property tax would just be cost prohibitive. It would defeat the purpose of having a second income. They need a second income that they can go to. My son's not here because he's at his other job, that they can do from home. And this is one of them. By having this, TVU at a reasonable, affordable $100 a night for people, it affords them to pay their mortgage and, just do the things that people in Hawaii want to do. We live in the highest cost of living state in the nation, and we pay most of our people very little. So not everybody's trying to make a killing or, go underground. They pay the 13.77% transient accommodation tax and GE tax, so they're above board, but they just want to be recognized, like you say, with a more fair bill, something
Thank
that's
you.
attached to TVUs, not hotels.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you very much. W.M. Page.
William Page.
Okay.
WM is a short shot for William. I brought testimony with me. I'm sorry I was not able to submit it in advance by email, but with your consideration, I would pass these around. The first piece is a recap of my testimony. The second piece is a pictogram, which is here. I'm going to show this to you. Leave copies of this with you. And the third piece is a resolution that was passed by the 80th Congress of the United States Conference of Mayors. And all three of these documents relate to my presentation. The people in Kailua have been saying that they're very upset about Bill 37, primarily because it is impacting just the licensed properties. It's not impacting the 80% of the market that's not licensed. And they said they have two choices in this matter, because with a tax increase of 350%, it literally knocks the bottom line off their whole operation. Why should they work so hard to have all this money going off to the state in some confiscatory manner, supposedly because they're bad citizens? And so what happens is that they take their vacation rental home, which is a 4-bedroom home, and it's on the beach, and there's a little note here that says 5,000, real property taxes 6,000, and that's actually close to 10 or 15,000, which would then go up 3.5% to 50,000. So they say, okay, they're going to close that down and not do the rentals anymore. And the first thing that happens, it knocks out all of the rental income. And the second thing that happens is that it knocks out the food and beverage income, which is about 30% of visitor spending. And then it knocks out the spending for retail, and it knocks out the spending for activities, and it knocks out $33,000 in
Could you
taxes.
pick up the microphone, because all of this is recorded?
Sorry.
Plus, you've kind of gone over, so if you could start
Okay.
to summarize.
The point of the matter is that closing down of these vacation rental units does not provide additional revenue to City and County of Honolulu. It significantly would hurt our communities, and it's just a negative. It's a negative solution to what is a non-problem, as there is nothing that is being done at vacation rentals or B&Bs that could not be mitigated by easy police action. Point out this 80th Conference of Mayors, and the top line in this whole thing, there's sentence after sentence after sentence of the great things that happen because of tourism in our community, the jobs that are created, and the revenue that's created for the communities. And the top line of this is, don't step on them. Don't step on them and kick them in the face. Treat them like any other rental. Short stay, long stay, it's all the same. Encourage them to sign up. Encourage them to identify themselves to you. Encourage them to pay their taxes. Get to know who they are and encourage them to pay the hotel tax. And that will generate the lowest cost, no cost of enforcement, City and County of Honolulu, highest revenues possible, City and County of Honolulu. If you want to increase the taxes, sign them up.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you. Any
I'm sorry I took so
questions?
much time.
Any questions for Mr. Page? Thank you. Okay, anyone else wish to testify on Bill 37? Okay, then chairs, please come to the table.
Aloha, councilwomen, councilmen. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. My name is Kymberly. I'm the president of the B&B Association of Oahu since 1999. I have a very short message. You are not creating a ripple. You are creating a tsunami, swallowing up all the legal B&Bs, killing the majority of them. All this to just get money. And we are suggesting that maybe you take a second look at the rail and put the rail aside until you have the money to pay for the rail, and do not exploit us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on Bill 37? Okay, Chair's going to recommend that, I guess we should amend it to a CD1 and then defer it. Okay, Chair's going to recommend that Bill 37 be amended to a CD1, and I guess I went over all of the amendments earlier. So, any objection, any discussion, any objections? Okay, bill has been amended to a CD1, and as amended, Bill 37 CD1, Chair's going to recommend that we defer action on this until further notice, because we will have another bill. Any discussion? Yes, Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. In strong support of your recommendation. I understand that Bill 37 has been amended to a CD1, but my objection to Bill 37 really is the intent of the bill. What the bill is looking to do is place into a separate real property tax category those licensed short-term rentals that have non-conforming use certificates. And at the same time, my understanding is that all of those that are operating illegally would be given an unfair advantage over these folks. Additionally, Madam Chair, all of the hotel properties also have the ability to have additional revenue-generating entities on their properties. They have gift shops, they have restaurants, they have cafes, they have bars. These short-term rental operations are not going to be afforded that same luxury as the hotel category that they're going to be put in, to have all of these additional revenue-making entity or uses on their properties. I did vote with reservations last week during first reading, Madam Chair, to advance the bill to this point so that we could discuss it here in committee. But being that we did have the opportunity to discuss today, Madam Chair, the intent of the bill, I don't support, but I do fully support your recommendation to defer the bill, thus holding it in this committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Monahan.
Chair, I also appreciate the recommendation. I just feel the same. I just think that the intent of the administration, I think, is a good one in as far as that they're trying to find revenue enhancements by not taxing homeowner or resident owners, or kamaaina basically. But I just feel that this bill would be a little unfair to those who are trying to play by the rules. So I really appreciate the recommendation to defer. Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Menor.
Yeah, since I'm not a voting member of the Budget Committee, I wanted to offer these comments because I'm not going to be able to on the floor since this is not going to reach the floor.
Right.
But I just wanted to state from the record my support of your recommendation. Although I believe that some adjustment in the real property tax rates with respect to transient units may be in order, I believe that this bill goes too far. I believe that by lumping the transient units, including bed and breakfast and other vacation rental units, in the category of, along with hotels and resorts, could unduly burden and negatively impact the ability of these transient units to be able to continue to offer important accommodations and other services to a significant segment of our visitor market. I think the preferred approach would be to proceed or to evaluate what Chair Martin has recommended, an approach which would basically set up a separate category or class as opposed to lumping these transit units into the same category with hotels and resorts. So based on that, I think you're making the right recommendation. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Just one
yes.
final comment, Madam Chair.
Councilmember Anderson.
You know, Chair, my office has been working on the short-term rental issue for many years now, dating back to the time of my predecessor, the late Council Chair Barbara Marshall. And as Council Chair Marshall believed, we either we need to address the short-term rental issue in its entirety rather than doing so piecemeal. And if we are of the opinion, the city as a whole, administration and council, that we need to address this issue at the appropriate time, Madam Chair, I would suggest that we do that, but doing that through piecemeal legislation like this, whether it's taxing, whether it's looking at different measures to bring them into compliance, we really need to look at the issue as a whole rather than piecemeal. And at the appropriate time, if this council wants to do that, then we should move forward and do that and work with the administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Martin.
Yeah, I think the Vice Chair has put it, hit the nail on the head with respect to this particular issue. That's why I had earlier said during discussion, prior to discussion, during questioning of the administration, that we are working on two bills. You know, exactly. And we need to look at the whole issue holistically rather than through piecemeal legislation. So I know Vice Chair Anderson has worked on this not months but years. So hopefully we can make some progress soon. I'll work with his office because he has a lot of expertise, not only himself but his staff, having dealt with this issue in the past. So I'm not confident, but fairly confident that we can come out with some type of legislation to finally address this issue once and for all. So thank you, Chair. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I think the bottom line is, the unfairness of those who are legal, and then they're having to pay more, and then those that are illegal and getting off with not paying. So that's a problem we've been dealing with for many, many years, and it's a very difficult problem. Okay, any further discussion? Any objections to the recommendation to defer? Any objections? Hearing none. Bill 37 CD1 is deferred. Moving on to Bill 38, initiating the cancellation of the real property tax exemptions for dedicated lands in urban districts. Director Koyanagi.
This is another bill that addresses the exemptions that are provided. And this particular one is for certain lands in urban areas that property owners can receive, can dedicate and receive the exemption. And this bill eliminates that or repeals that exemption.
Any questions for the director? The proposed CD, there is a proposed CD1 which amends the deadline for dedication petitions from September 1, 2013 to September 30th, 2013, and it adds a new section 3 specifying that ROH section 8-10.13 shall be repealed on January 1, 2019. It also corrects formatting errors. Okay, Natalie, thank you. Natalie Iwasa.
Thank you, Natalie Iwasa, for the record. I just wanted to state that my understanding is that this particular exemption for the open space is covered under right-of-way or another section in the code that would allow for people to have reduced rates. So I just want to make sure that we're not doing something here that is going to impact people and the owners of those properties so that they either, take away the open space or something else that has a negative consequence. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Iwasa? Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on Bill 38? Yes.
Aloha, Holly Huber. From my extensive research into this particular property tax exemption, many of these exemptions have existed for quite some time, and some of them are no longer valid. That open space no longer exists, or it's somebody's backyard that they've decided to dedicate so that they no longer have to pay property tax on it. So I fully support canceling this exemption, but I think it can be done much more quickly. I would ask that, because there's only, I believe, 13, that the city council be made aware of what those properties are and to what extent those exemptions cover, and also to how long they've been in place. And I think you'll find that this is something that could be expedited and canceled much more quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a bill, so it has to go through the 3 readings, yeah.
You should be able to get information.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyone else wish to testify on Bill 38? Okay, Chair recommends that Bill 38 be amended to a CD1, which was just discussed. Any discussion? Any objections? Thank you. The Bill 38 has been amended to a CD1. The Chair then recommends that Bill 38, CD1, be reported out for a second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, so ordered. Moving on to Bill 39, adjusting the amount of certain real property tax exemptions. And members, we do have a hand-carried proposed CD1, which makes the following amendments. It further amends the exemption in Section 8-10.9 to require that in order to receive the exemption, the property must be actually and exclusively used for medical, indemnity, or hospital services purposes. It also corrects formatting errors. Director Koyanagi.
Bill 39 is another exemption type bill, and according to the advisory committee, their recommendation is that every taxpayer should pay for the services that are provided by the city, at least something for the services, or if they have the means to pay, then they should pay. So that's what this bill tries to achieve.
Okay. Any questions for the director? Yes, Councilmember Manor.
So I know that you indicated that this bill would, in a broad sense, implement the approach recommended by the Advisory Commission, but did the Commission specifically address this particular exemption with respect to the mutual benefits and non-mutual benefits? I didn't see any specific recommendation on that for the medical.
I know it was mentioned, I'm not sure if they specifically...
Because I don't see any specific discussion on or recommendation saying we eliminate the exemption with respect to nonprofit medical hospital indemnity associations and what the potential impact of that might be.
Yeah, I'm not sure offhand, but just to clarify, this bill does not, remove the exemption. It has a space for, adjusting the exemption. So it wouldn't be 100%, but it would be a percentage.
Right. That's correct. I stand corrected. Okay, but it's not clear that this particular bill is to implement a specific recommendation from the Commission. Is that correct?
I think they looked at all of it, but maybe not specifically in the report made any kind of formal recommendation, but I believe it was all part of the whole package of the nonprofit issue that it was related to.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you. Mark Otto from HMSA. And welcome home.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, committee members, Mark Otto on behalf of HMSA. You have our written testimony, so I'll try to summarize here. We fully understand the need of the city to review the real property tax system as a whole. But that said, and with all due respect to my former friends, HMSA must oppose this measure. Let me give you the context of this. This would effectively potentially eliminate or reduce the real property tax exemption afforded mutual benefit societies, and HMSA has been a mutual benefit society since 1938. What this bill will do is add basically to the cost of health care. And it comes really at a bad time, a time when we're trying to implement the Affordable Care Act, the Federal Affordable Care Act. Healthcare reform does not come without costs. So already built into our rates that we just gave to the insurance commissioner was a 2.3% rate increase for a federal, in effect, a federal tax. That federal tax will pay for the implementation of the Affordable Care Act, ACA, at the federal level. Another element, and there are really three elements that are currently we're being affected by, among many others, but three in terms of the rates. The other is that the Affordable Care Act mandates the states to use a rating system, age rate. We have to age rate our members now, our businesses now. So for example, a small business with, let's say, 4 people who are 50, 60-year-old, when you age rate them, you will see their rates zoom up. We currently don't age rate. To spread the risk, we do experience rating, and we are able to spread them across the board over all our small businesses. And the third thing is sustainability. The Affordable Care Act requires each state to have an exchange, and Hawaii has, by state law, the Hawaii Health Connector. And beginning in October, they're going to start offering health insurance to individuals and small businesses. The law requires that right now they're federally funded, but by 2015, they have to be self-sustaining. The board made a decision, I think, in June, the board of the connector, that part of the sustainability plan will be in effect, a state-level fee on insurers. A proposal before the connector health committee, I think, speaks initially to a 2% rate increase. So you're going to see now we're facing, on average, I think our health plans, just for basic increase in healthcare costs, 4 to 6% varies a year, just basic healthcare. Over and above that, now you're going to see this 2.3% federal tax, whatever the age rate impact is, percentage increase, and now potentially a 2% increase just due to the state-based connector sustainability fee. Given that context, we're very concerned about any other additional damage really to the people of Hawaii who actually have to buy the health insurance here. Thank you.
Okay, any questions? Yes, Councilmember Pine.
Sorry, I'm just a little confused. Are you saying the Affordable Care Act is going to increase medical costs in Hawaii?
Yes, it will.
I thought it was supposed to reduce medical
I think,
costs.
excuse me, Councilmember Pine, the objective is in the long term that the overall, you're going to spread the risk because the pool now becomes larger. Everybody is brought into the pool. Hawaii is really different. Because of our prepaid healthcare law, really for the past, over 30 years now, we have a very low uninsured rate in Hawaii, unlike the other 49 states. So in a lot of ways, it would be nice if we could get an exemption, but it does not allow us to, state to apply for an exemption until 2017. So that's a problem we're facing. We have to implement this. We know we have a very low uninsured rate. We have to create this new entity, and we just have to live with its federal law. But in the long term, nationwide, the anticipation is that you'll have broader coverage, more and broader coverage, and hopefully lower healthcare costs.
So we're going to pay more for healthcare to pay for other states that don't have healthcare.
Well, each one is state-based, but looking at the statistics statewide, nationwide is what the objective.
Okay. Thank you.
And if I may, individually, though, we are trying to, all the healthcare system in Hawaii is trying to lower our healthcare costs. Despite this, we've gone away from the fee-for-service model, so we don't charge by volume, the number of patients going through the system. We now pay based on quality measures. So the whole system is trying to change here, but now we're just faced with these new federally mandated taxes. It just kind of delays that improvement process here in Hawaii.
Is your organization and other healthcare providers expressing these financial concerns to our congressional delegation, so maybe we can get exemptions?
Yes,
in the future?
we've in fact, our CEO and our Vice President, Jen Diesman, just came back from D.C. to express the concern.
Thanks. Nice to see you. You look
Thank
very
you.
good.
Thank you.
That's because he's not with government.
I know. He left government, he's healthy
That's
now.
why he's smiling and he looks healthy.
HMSA is good for my
Any further questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Natalie Iwasa.
Thank you, Natalie Iwasa, for the record. I was a member of the Real Property Tax Advisory Commission, and generally, when we were looking at these exemptions, we were looking at the what formulates good tax policy, and that is fairness, equity, simplicity, adequacy, stability, efficiency, and competitiveness. And so when we look at these exemptions, we need to keep in mind that we are treating one party with more benefits than another party. And so that was kind of the overriding thought that we had going through this process. Another recommendation that we had, and this is happening now, was that the exemptions that we currently have be justified. So I'm really happy to see these discussions taking place. As far as this particular exemption, it's costing taxpayers $7.6 million per year. And I think we need to look at, do for-profit hospitals benefit as much as the nonprofit hospitals, or how does that work together? And should this exemption continue to stay at the rate it is? So I just ask you to look at those issues, and also transparency and how we're putting our tax system together. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Iwasa? Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on Bill 39?
Aloha, Holly Huber. I support Bill 39 because, again, I do support that everyone pay their fair share, even if it's a small percentage. If you read the Time Magazine article on healthcare costs, you'd know that nonprofit healthcare providers, whether they be hospitals or even university-associated nonprofit medical service centers, they are making a huge amount of money. And we shouldn't be subsidizing all that. Many of these nonprofit health centers, medical centers, and hospitals have for-profit entities that are currently getting a tax exemption. They have cosmetic surgery centers that are part of their services and part of their entity. In many cases, they do not separate out the doctor's offices that they're charging for. There is history in our tax courts that say that we cannot give a tax exemption to doctor's offices that are contained within a hospital and that are being charged full rent. The doctors are being charged full rent, but the hospital is getting a property tax exemption. This goes back to, I believe, an issue with St. Francis East. So there are a lot of concerns here, and it is not a, oh gosh, your hospitals are so good, we have to subsidize them. Of course they are, but to what extent? And I believe this is a complicated issue that needs to be reviewed very carefully. Mahalo.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Huber? Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on Bill 39?
I am sorry, I asked for your indulgence. I'm late. I was going to testify for Resolution 13-61 regarding the collective bargaining for the police.
Oh, we already voted on that, so we can't discuss it anymore.
Oh, okay, no problem. Well, basically, the bigger picture that I'm concerned about is fiscal priorities and, fiscal prudence. As you know, we're having trouble with the mayor wanting to continue to seize the property from us. As of today, the Department of Design and Construction can build another new Hauula fire station today. They bought a lot in April 2010, and that lot is 20,000 square feet. That is sufficient for an average fire station. Your Macaulay Mo'ili'ili Fire Station sits on 19,555 square feet. Those Kaneohe, Wahewa.
I'm sorry, we're on this Bill 39, which has to do with medical indemnity or hospital services.
Well, I was trying to push it to fiscal priorities. I just don't understand. It's my opinion that if the city is careful with budgeting, that there will be enough money to spend for all people. And I think that at this point, the mayor is ruthless in not working with the community and wanting to push for a fire station that does not need double the lot and triple the costs. And to me, again, fiscal prudence is so important. I think we all can win. The police can get what they want. Civil citizens don't have to worry about their pensions or getting furloughs. If we only just act fairly and equitable and with common sense,
Thank you.
At this point, we're not getting in our case at this time.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on Bill 39? Okay, Chair's going to recommend that Bill 39 be amended to a CD1, which was just discussed. Any discussion? Any objections? Thank you. The bill has been amended to a CD1. And Chair then recommends that Bill 39 CD1 be reported out for second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none. Bill 39 CD1 is reported out for second reading. Okay, moving on to Bill 40, repealing the in lieu of home exemption. Budget Director?
The in lieu tax exemption provides additional exemptions for elderly, or as you get older, you get more exemptions. However, we're recommending, or this bill recommends repealing that exemption because it's kind of a duplicating a tax credit that the city already has. that is to address the lower income taxpayer. So there is a tax credit policy program where a taxpayer that earns $50,000 or less only pays a certain portion of the income. So if it's elderly person, then they would pay only 3% of their income, and if it's another, if a person is not elderly but he qualifies for the credit, then they'd pay 4% of the income. So there's the tax credit out there. So this particular section of the ordinance, this in lieu of home exemption, kind of duplicates that the tax credit. So this bill recommends repealing that section.
Any questions for the director? Councilmember Menor?
No, I'll defer to the committee
Oh,
members.
Councilmember Pine?
So really, to you, this is just a housekeeping measure to clarify our ordinances?
Well, it's gonna, unfortunately, the list of those that have this exemption versus those that have the credit are not the exact same lists. Ideally, they would match up exactly, and then there would be no impact. But there's a few differences between the in lieu of and the tax credit. One of the differences is that the tax credit only allows you to have one property, which is your residence. This exemption allows you to have multiple properties. So people that have multiple properties would not qualify for the tax credit, so they would fall out. But again, it goes back to what the advisory commission recommended, that those that can afford to pay taxes for the services that are provided should be able to pay those taxes, and that's why we're looking at repealing this particular exemption.
It's a little confusing. You just said they don't have the same list, so it seems like if we do make this change, there'll be a lot of confusion with the public who are used to maybe using just this exemption instead of the other exemptions. So if we do repeal this, will there be a lot of education in the community to explain? Because I just remember when my grandma was alive, she didn't have the internet and get all the updates of things, and so this may cause some people a lot of stress who don't quite understand your other program.
That could be true, but I think right now it does cause confusion because they have this program as well as the tax credit program. So there's a number of people are confused on should I do this, should I do that, or so either way there is confusion right now. So.
Councilmember Manahan, followed by Councilmember Fukunaga.
Thank you very much, Chair. Mr. Koyanagi, Director Koyanagi, so you're saying that this particular exemption is, I guess, redundant. I just have a couple of questions. I guess the financial impact of removing the in lieu of exemption, as well as the, my second question would be, are there anybody, or is there anybody right now taking advantage of both the tax credit as well as the exemption?
If you applied at both programs, the in lieu of and the tax credit, the maximum amount that you can receive would be with the tax credit. What the exemption program does, it reduces your net assessed value, which reduces your taxes. But in the ultimate end, the credit will be smaller because your taxes are lowered. So that's how the two programs would work. So basically, the tax credit program is like a safety net, a circuit breaker, and that should be the program that's in place so that nobody is forced to, like they say, sell their property because of the real property tax. With the question about the two lists, we don't know if people applied for both programs and was kicked out of one program or not, or they just applied for one program and that's why they're not on the tax credit program, right? I mean, they wouldn't be on the same list. it could be that reason, or they could be, owning multiple properties. But I think at the end of the day, we want to make sure that, the tax credit is a safety net for, all taxpayers, and that is on their percentage of their income, and it's only for their property. So we think that that's the better program and the fairest program when you look at the two programs in the in lieu of versus the tax credit.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilmember Fukunaga.
Yes, do you have a kind of a rough tally of how many individuals who are impacted or who are currently taking advantage of the tax exemption?
I think, when we did, looking at the list, there's about 2,000 people that have qualified for the in lieu of exemption.
Okay.
And there's about 2,000 that are getting the tax credit. Unfortunately, when we match the two lists, they're not exactly the same. There's about 600 people that are on both lists out of the 2,000. The rest of the people, we're not sure why, if they just didn't apply, because it's such a confusing, when you have the two programs, they just didn't apply for one or the other. Or like I said, that they might own more than one property is the reason why they're not on the other list, right? Because the tax credit, you're not allowed to own more than one property.
Okay, so for the 2,000 that are currently on your tax exemption list, what is the approximate impact? What is the revenue that you would otherwise anticipate generating if this exemption were removed?
I gotta look at that number. Hang on.
We can get
Hang
that.
on. Yeah,
We can get that information to you.
Okay, if you can submit that to the chair. I think actually for many of the department's testimonies, it would be very helpful if the department submitted to the chair a short write-up as to the number of taxpayers falling in within that category and a rough estimate of the fiscal impact of the change,
Sure, we
proposed
can do
change. Thank you.
Councilmember Manor.
Yeah, just for clarification, with respect to the two programs, there is, of course, the income threshold in order to be able to qualify and participate. For the in lieu exemption, it references total household income must be less than 80% of the median income. And then with respect to the real property tax credit program, you indicated that $50,000 household income threshold. So how does that match up? Or I guess my concern is, if we eliminate the in lieu exemption, would everyone who any elderly person or couple who is currently eligible for the in lieu exemption, will they all be able to qualify for the real property tax credit as an alternative, as a substitute?
When we're talking about income qualification for the two programs, the in lieu of exemption is basically looking at household income, meaning people in the household, right? And that's something that we cannot verify. The tax credit program is, their income is based on owners on title. So we know who's on title, and the 50,000 threshold is all of the owners on title. So for example, if you're living alone on the property, but you have siblings on title, that 50,000 will apply to all people on title, all owners, okay? That's the tax credit program. If you're on the in lieu side, on the exemption, it's the household income. So whoever is living in the house would have to qualify for the 50,000. That's a difference in how the income qualifications. So in short, to answer your question, they might not be related, right? When people on the in lieu of list, income qualified may not qualify on the other tax credit because of that reason. They might have more siblings or owners on title, so that might disqualify them. For example, if you was on the in lieu of side, I know it's confusing, and you're living there by yourself, right? You're only counting your income. But if you would go to the tax credit side, it will depend on how many owners would be on title. So there's a slight difference there when qualifying the income.
Yeah, and I guess conversely, you could be living in a household with multiple people, and you're the only one on title, so you can qualify for the credit. But you might not qualify for the in lieu because of the household income. So it's kind of confusing. And what happens now is because Real Property Assessment Division takes care of the in lieu, and Treasury Division takes care of the credit. you have a duplicative effort. You know, two sections of BFS are doing similar things.
So I guess, my concern is that with respect to those who currently, the elderly individuals or couples who currently are eligible for the in-lieu exemption, that those individuals whose household income is less than 80% of the median income, that these are individuals on fixed incomes with limited means. And I would want to be satisfied in my own mind that if we eliminate this in-lieu exemption, that all of those who are currently eligible for the in-lieu exemption would be able to qualify and receive the real property tax credit under that particular program. So that we don't have elderly individuals or residents who really need financial assistance or live on fixed incomes with limited means, that they don't fall through the cracks. That's my concern.
No, that's a good point.
Is there a way you could send a notice to those who may fall out if they're just having this exemption and they're not in the credit program?
Yes, we could send out a mailer to those that would be affected.
So they'll know about this credit program,
credit
because it's a
program.
much better program.
Yes,
Mhm.
we can do that.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Monahan.
Would there be any way of either grandfathering those folks who are already currently receiving this benefit, or making it possibly like prospective, like starting from here on out, we won't allow it? Or does that make any sense?
No, I think that, if there is a possibility of grandfathering some of the people already in the program. Now, what happens is, for every 5 years, from 65, if every 5 years, there's a 20,000 increase in the exemption amount. So basically, for every 5 years, there's about maybe $70 that you get, in tax dollars that you receive, right, as you get older. We could possibly, let them finish out whatever period they're in before they get, excluded from the program, or something, any combination of that. But we just feel that the duplication of the work, right, that this is entailing. But we can try and look at measures to notify people about the credit program and look at, what other alternatives, we can do to assist.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, thank you. Natalie Iwasa.
Thank you, Natalie Iwasa, for the record. I support this bill. And this is another one that's very complex, not only because we're dealing with low-income people and what is under income, but also because we have this credit program, which itself is complex. If you haven't done so, I would recommend that you go to the applications and look at them and see, because then you'll find out what the differences are, what is labeled income under one and what is labeled income under the other, because they are not the same. And when we're looking at fairness and equity, this whole issue of income really needs to be looked at and better defined, because there are pieces that are not included. And with respect to the in lieu of and the credit, when people apply for them, I did this for my mother-in-law. We did 2 applications, and I got all the paperwork together, and it's not the same for each one. And then I sent them in, and I wanted to follow up because we were close to the deadline. It's very confusing because it's one division for one and another division for another, and essentially they're looking at the same thing. It's whether somebody can afford to pay the real property taxes, but we have these 2 systems set up. It's very inefficient, not only for the administration, but for the people who have to do these applications. And I often wonder, if people don't have a family CPA, how do they get these applications done? I mean, they probably have to pay for the applications themselves and the services that are being provided for that. So, let's get rid of this in lieu of exemption and work on the credit. The credit does need some work. There's no doubt about that. And with respect to the in lieu of, also, another reason is, they are allowed to have multiple properties. And when we're looking at somebody who doesn't have much money, but they have multiple properties, can't they sell one of them or more of them? I mean, my family doesn't own any properties, and there are many families that can't even afford to purchase a property. So why should we be subsidizing these families that have multiple properties? It's just another reason to remove this exemption.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Iwasa? Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on Bill 40? Yes, please come forward.
Aloha again. I'm probably an example of what you're talking about. I do oppose Bill 40. I live on $45,000 a year. I'm 71. I live alone, and I cannot afford the extra $40 every month that is going to cost me if you take away my exemption. I do not qualify for the tax credit program, and I would like for you to consider passing a bill where you don't take our exemption away, because I have lots of people that I know in my situation as well. And again, I'm Tonic Billy.
Thank you. Any questions? Yeah, the tax credit program, the income level is $50,000 and below. So
Yeah.
you would qualify for that. And then you would pay a percentage of your income as the tax.
Yeah, I just learned that today. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
Chun James from Kahuku. I just wanted to add the caveat. Sometimes we have a tendency to think that only the elderly needs help and only the elderly are suffering. Believe me, it is not true. Everybody is suffering. Unless we have a last name of Campbell or Zuckerberg, Hawaii is a very expensive place to live in, and we all suffer, and that is why I am just so passionate about wanting to see the government make common sense spending and fiscal priorities so that in the end we all win. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on Bill 40? Okay, Chair is going to recommend that Bill 40 be amended to a CD1, and the CD1 corrects formatting and Ramsar errors. Any discussion? Yes, Councilmember Pine.
I understand this still needs a couple more readings, but I just wanted to express my concern about this particular bill. It seems like we need to do a lot of work simultaneously on the credit side and to ensure that, for example, some of Councilmember Menor's concerns are met. We certainly don't want to have any of our elderly fall through the cracks that we didn't intend to affect. And I just feel like I still don't have enough information to make a good decision. But with the readings that are upcoming, I hope that the department furnishes us with more information. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilmember Harimoto.
Thank you. I guess for me, I do support this. For me, I've been dealing with the confusion that was talked about earlier with the credit and the exemption. It is totally confusing, not only to me to have to explain it to people. I need a cheat sheet because it is confusing. But it is, I think, more confusing, as we heard, for the public trying to apply for these. It's confusing in the sense that there are different criterias, there's different applications, and there's different offices. So we get complaints sometimes with people calling one office and getting totally frustrated, and it turns out they're calling the wrong office. So definitely confusion is a big issue of why I support this. But also, as was noted earlier, the commission report, one of the issues, central issues, was one of fairness. And I think this is one of the issues here in fairness, that I think it's a misconception that we often believe that age is a criteria in need. And, in a lot of cases it is, but in many cases it's not. I think there could be many elderly folks who are quite well-to-do. So in the exemption situation, it's largely based on age. The subsidy increases with age. So, that's another big issue. One of the other big issues is we're talking about people who may fall off if we eliminate this. While that may be true, I think perhaps more true is that people don't understand the difference and they would qualify for the other and perhaps even benefit more from the other. So I think when we go through this, we'll find that's probably true, and if necessary, we can adjust the credit side if need be. But I really believe that just in the single issue of confusion, we really need to eliminate this. It is just too confusing. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any objections to amending to a CD1? Thank you. So the bill has been amended to a CD1, and Chair then recommends that Bill 40, CD1, be reported out for second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion? Any objections?
I just have reservations.
Yes. Oh, okay. One reservation. Bill 40, CD1 is reported out for second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Moving on to Bill 41. I see former Chair Tada Poe here, and I don't know which bill he's here for. Okay, Bill 41 is adding residential multifamily as a new general real property class and providing language defining such properties. We do have a posted proposed CD1. The amendments are listed on the agenda, but it changes subsection I on page 9 of the bill to read as follows: residential multifamily shall mean a parcel or a portion thereof which is improved with a multifamily dwelling or multiple dwelling units. And it corrects formatting and Ramsar errors. Budget Director?
Gary Kurokawa again, Deputy Director of Budget and Fiscal Services. Bill 41 basically is one of those that are creating another, classification, and this one is for residential multifamily properties. Just historically, previously, the classifications that are included in the residential today, we used to have what is called unimproved residential, and apartment classes. There were 3 classes that were combined into the residential class that we have today. And so there's all kinds of different types of properties in what is residential today. What this Bill 41 is doing is, trying to separate out our, apartment type dwellings, right, that have higher usage than just residential properties, like residential homes or a condo unit. These are residential multifamily type properties to create its own class for an apartment group that we had previously.
Okay, any questions? Councilmember Manahan.
I just have a question as far as the real properties we're talking about. What is there a threshold that or an amount that you're looking at the assessed value of the property?
No, it's not based on any assessed value. This one here is just about the type of property it is. It's like apartment buildings, multiple dwelling type residential dwellings. It's nothing about dollar amounts.
Okay. Okay, I'll just come back to my questioning later. I just had a question about that. Thanks.
Okay, and yes, Councilmember Pine.
So what do you define as multifamily dwelling?
I think the bill says 2 or more that are not condominiums, I believe is the general rule.
So 2 separate parts
two
of a house.
dwellings
that's
on a property or more.
And so now you want to put them together with apartments that could have 20,
Well,
30, 40?
Those are the ones that are going to be put in this residential multifamily, is those with the multiple units. One owner owning more than 2 dwelling units, right? 3, 4, 20, 100 units are apartments, multi-dwellings. Those are currently all together with the single family today and the condo units.
think it's complicated for a bigger issue that we're trying to address statewide, and especially on Oahu. In a lot of the meetings with our homeless providers, as well as with state officials that are tackling the homeless issues, we recognize that there's no way that we can provide enough housing for our lower income residents. And so what we are looking into is possibly encouraging more of these multi-dwelling units, especially in the Hawaiian Homelands community, as a way to help them to provide housing for their families, and they'll take their house and separate in different sections. So I'm just a little concerned about putting those type of multifamily units with apartments. It's that could complicate it when we want to either raise or reduce the tax, because it may hurt the efforts overall of what we're trying to do to provide affordable housing.
Maybe, we need to take a look at, what kind of proposals you are having, and then see where it fits in, and maybe we can work with you on that, how that definition fits in with the multifamily.
Like 10 or more, that would be more of an apartment.
Well, we can look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for the director? Thank you. Natalie Iwasa.
Thank you, Natalie Wassa, for the record. I oppose this bill. Specifically to address your concerns, I think you need to look at other exemptions, because there's already exemptions in place for Hawaiian homelands, and we also have Section 8 housing that has some generous exemptions, so you may be covered in that specific instance. But my concern with respect to this bill is that we will hit renters who aren't in Section 8 housing, and renters who aren't renting the higher income properties. We have 40% of our residents on Oahu approximately who rent, and most of those pay more than a third of their incomes toward housing. And what's going to happen if we increase the real property taxes? The landlords are going to increase their rents. So, I can't say enough about renters and trying to watch out what happens when we do these types of policies. The other thing is that we should be simplifying our tax system, not making it more complex, and that's what this bill does as well. Please vote no on this bill.
Thank you. Any questions for, yes, Councilmember Harimoto.
Thank you. I do share some of the concerns, but on the other hand, I wanted to ask you about one of the other central issues in the commission report was one of fairness.
Yes.
So if we look at an apartment house, say with, 200 units, or 200 people living there, don't they use more city services than a single-family house with 2 people living there? So how do you reconcile them?
That's a very good question. I think if you're going to go down that road, you're going to find a lot of other issues. Why do condominiums still pay for real property taxes when they have to have separate private garbage pickup? Is that fair? I mean, they're paying for all the services, right? But they have to pay for a private contractor as well. We just had a measure about maintaining private roads, right? So they maintain their private roads, as well as some that are not dedicated to the city yet, but are used by the public. So they're paying real property taxes, but they're not getting the benefit of having their roads maintained because it's not a public road. Is that fair? That's a very good question, but I think it has a lot of implications if you're going to go that route.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to testify? Oh.
Barbara Armitage, for the record. Again, I'm a member of Neighborhood Board 5, but I'm speaking as an individual on this. This one almost kind of encompasses all of St. Louis Heights in a way, because there's 2 houses on lots, there's 4 to 5 families, one house. I live in a house that's two people. I mean, two different entities living in the house, multifamily. And if this was done, they would increase the rents. They increase the rents, then it could be increased to the fact that if someone was Section 8, it wouldn't be in the guidelines for them to even live in that house. Also, a lot of the apartments and stuff, UH students come in, and that has to be affordable for them. And again, like what Natalie Awasa said, these are renters. This is affecting renters. It's affecting everybody that needs affordable housing in a way, and it's going to make it so that it's not going to be affordable to them in these new condos that are coming, and they're putting affordable housing. Half the people that need affordable housing aren't going to be able to get in these affordable housing new condos. So I think you should maybe look for some of these new buildings going up to make these people that are building these buildings pay for the infrastructure and the sewers that have to be and the water and everything that has to be increased because of these new buildings. They should have to pay for that there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Armentrout? Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on Bill 41?
Thank you, Chun James and Kahuku. I do have a question. With that multiple family dwelling, where we are, there are plenty of multiple families dwelling, but of course they're not permitted on paper. So is the budget, budget chair saying that it is those permitted multifamily duplexes, fourplexes, triplexes, or is it just the Hawaii-style homes where Councilmember Pine has said that a lot of people have one single-family permitted home, but there are 4 units to it. And again, it does affect renters. I just want to give you an example. In Laie, when we were turned into a sewer district during Mufi Henneman's time, each dwelling was given 1 sewer tank. But now we have sewer workers who go around looking the community and saying that, hey, you have to pay double your sewage fee because you have someone living with you or because you have students there. And so there's that whole huge confusion, because even though a home is permitted as one single family, some people convert their garage so that they could have a little bit more income, but those people have to pay double because the workers are going around looking at them. But it is on permit, a single family dwelling.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on Bill 41?
Aloha, my name is Holly Huber. I oppose Bill 41. Am I the only one who remembers that we used to have a multifamily designation? It lasted 1 year. We sat through all that testimony. I see Councilmember Haramoto and Kobayashi nodding. That was some nasty stuff. Nobody liked it. It wasn't applied properly. And I have to say, the Real Property Assessment Division, what are they going to do? Are they going to go around knocking on doors and find out how many families live in some of these homes? No. If there are properties that are capable of handling multiple families, then raise the assessed value of those. If we think that they're such huge money makers and that they're such great properties that they are so valuable because they can handle multiple renters, then they should be assessed as such. But to set up this new system, which is actually an old system which didn't work the first time, I think is really bad. Again, I agree with Natalie. This is adding a level of complication that I'm not sure our Real Property Assessment Division can handle.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on Bill 41? Okay, Chair's going to recommend that Bill 41 be amended to a CD1 that was previously discussed. Any discussion? Yes. Councilmember Monahan.
If I may, I'm going to support your recommendation and the discussion on this measure. I do have some concerns with it in terms of the properties that will be affected, but as we move through the process, I will work, hopefully we can work on those, and I hope maybe if BFS is open to putting a value to the property, such as a floor value, to the properties, the type of properties that might be affected by this measure, I'd be willing to look at that, but I will support your recommendation.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Yes, Councilmember Pine.
I'll support continued discussion. I definitely want to work with the director because as this is written, this would affect a very large portion of my community.
Right.
And I may note Kalihi, Eva Beach, Waipahu as well. So I think we need to look at this more thoroughly.
Okay, any further discussion? Any objections? Okay, the bill has been amended to a CD1. Chair then recommends that Bill 41 CD1 be reported out for second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion? Any objections? Thank you. Bill 41 CD1 is reported out for second reading. Moving on to Bill 42, adding residential A as a new general real property class. And there is a proposed CD1, and there are several items, but they are on your agenda. A definition of residential A, and vacant land zone, different residential categories, and is a condominium unit located in a multifamily dwelling with an assessed valuation in excess of $1 million and does not qualify for a home exemption. So those are in the CD1. And it also corrects formatting and Ramsar errors. Budget Director?
Gary Kurokawa, Deputy Director of Budget and Fiscal Services. Bill 42 is again creating a class separate from the actual residential class. What this does is sets a threshold of $1 million for properties that are over $1 million that don't have a home exemption would be moved into this residential A class. What this does, it does not affect people with their homeowners exemptions, and people, renters, renting properties under over $1 million would not be affected also. So this is just creating a separate class within the residential A.
Okay, any questions for the Director? Okay, thank you. Scott Slagle. Natalie Iwasa.
Thank you, Natalie Iwasa, for the record. I just have some concerns about this bill. Once again, we're making the system more complex than we are, than it currently is. And we're just trying to stick it to those awful investors. And I just wonder, $1 million is not that much these days. I mean, when we're looking at the median value, or the average value the other day, it was reported as at $700,000. And what's happened in my case is, what I've noticed is that the landlords, they've been in their properties, they've raised their families, and then they move out to condominiums or much smaller properties, and then they rent out their homes that they were in, so they don't have an exemption anymore. So I can see how this would be easy for you to pass because it's not getting our typical residents. But if you're going to do that, I ask you to increase this threshold from $1 million to maybe $2 million. $1 million these days is just not that much. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Pine.
How is this different from before you testified in favor of an elderly person being taxed more if they have two properties? They don't live on that second property, but you were for that. So why is this different, and why wouldn't you encourage them to sell that property if they don't live in it?
This bill is, what they're doing is setting up a new class so that they can have a higher rate for this particular person, because it's geared toward investors, basically, people who have higher assessed valued properties. The in lieu of exemption is what you're referring to. Those are lower income people who are getting a tax subsidy. This is not a tax subsidy. So there are two separate issues. One is creating a higher rate for those who have higher supposedly incomes, and the other is subsidizing people who have more than one property. Two different issues.
Thank you, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to testify? Please come forward.
Tonic Billy, I agree with this person that just testified. I was in the committee meeting with the neighborhood board in Kailua last night. We discussed this, and all of us agreed that the 1 million should be raised to 2 million because of the property values are much higher today.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify?
Aloha, my name is Holly Huber. I have some comments about this. I'm very concerned as to the realities of implementing this yet another new classification. Obviously, whatever threshold you set, whether it be 1 million or 2 million, you will be inundated with people who are going to challenge their property tax assessments to try and get in under the threshold. And I don't know that we really have the capacity to handle that. I also doubt whether the Real Property Assessment Division has the capacity to handle yet another classification. And the biggest problem is the home exemption. What you might not know is that there appears to be absolutely no control over who has a home exemption. Most of our exemptions are self-reporting, and so we just trust people at face value. If they fill out the form and say they have a home, and say they are a homeowner and living there, then they get it, and there's no taking it away. People die, and the home exemption stays. That might not be an issue, except that as you get older, the home exemption increases, and as far as I can tell, the Real Property Assessment Division has absolutely no means of determining whether or not that homeowner is in fact residing in that home. Hawaii has a huge number of second and third homeowners, where people want to buy a vacation property here, and there's nothing stopping them from filling out that form and claiming that they're a homeowner and therefore bypassing this higher rate until the Real Property Assessment Division decides to implement measures, which there are tons of different measures to implement. You can look at whether or not they have a Hawaii driver's license. That's really easy. You can require a certain number of days, like they do in Manhattan. If you live in Manhattan for a certain number of days, then you are in fact a resident. If you do not, then you own a part-time home. And then there's even third-party companies that do the research that will look through all the homeowners. If you look at all our homeowners exemptions, they don't all have Hawaii mailing addresses. Well, of course not. Some of them might be trusts, elderly people who it's administered on the mainland.
Thank you.
That's fine, but it needs to be looked at. Mahalo.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Sean James.
Thank you. I also want to add that, in Hawaii, you could have a check and it's worth $1 million. It's not very hard to reach that $1 million threshold. In my experience, I have also seen that, it seems like this bill would actually affect more Kama'aina, old-timer people, because usually when someone has 2 homes on the lot, an investor has 2 homes on the lot, they CPR it and they sell it. So it's usually the older families who have that, and a lot of time, the mom and dad may not be there. They might be living in Las Vegas or California, but they hang on to that homes because their children are living in it, but they're not comfortable enough at the point where they're willing to transfer the title to the family or the children. And so they're considered investors. They're honest enough to not claim that exemption even though they only own that property. So those are things to consider. But in my opinion, I think that this targets more the old-timers and the local people more than anybody else. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on Bill 42? Okay, Chair is going to recommend that Bill 42 be amended to a CD1 that was previously discussed. Any discussion? Yes. Councilmember Monahan.
Thank you very much. I'd be open to the suggestion of maybe looking at that threshold, down the line. It doesn't have to be right now, but thank you very much if we can consider that in the future.
Thank you. Councilmember Minor.
Chair, I don't know if this would be in order, or if I should perhaps wait for the full council meeting when we take up this measure again. But I just wanted to get clarification from Director Koyanagi as to how they came up with that threshold of $1 million as opposed to 1.5 or 2 million. We'll take it up at full council meeting. Okay.
Well, I think we were discussing, because we had this resident, non-resident tax before, and it didn't work because it hurt the renters.
Right.
So it was thought that if renters usually don't rent a place that's over $1 million, so then they wouldn't be affected.
Right.
Because we're trying to protect the renters.
That's correct. And then my final question is, I believe that this would be a significant revenue generator, correct? What's the estimate if we were to pass this into law?
We're not. Do we have an estimate?
I thought you had an estimate.
And is there another reasoning for the 1 million? Is there another reason, or?
I think, basically the reasoning was that, we looked at, for the last years, what the median single-family home was, right? It's around 600,000 to 650,000. So we selected 1 million as the upper limit. As far as, and comparing it to homes that people would be renting, $1 million we thought would be something that, most people don't rent. $1 million home. I mean, local students or people that are looking in Makiki or, to go to school is probably renting properties less than $1 million. For your estimate, if we had the threshold at $1 million, I guess, somewhere in the vicinity of 7,000 properties. When we look at the valuation, right, what would be over $1 million without a homeowner's exemption was the number, about 7,000 parcels.
Okay. Oh, Councilmember Pine.
Do you have any economic information or any studies that your department has done that has shown a comparison of increase in outside investors and how that correlates with the increased cost for local families trying to buy a house?
We used to have when foreign investors used to buy property in Hawaii, they used to have to register at the Bureau, fill out a form at Foreign Investments. That was repealed, and we lost that information. Now we don't know who is coming from the outside to buy properties. So we don't have that information offhand.
Okay, Councilmember Monahan.
Yeah, again, I just wanted, in light of the question of Councilmember Minor with regards to that $1 million, what happens a lot, and if we don't want to affect the renters in many of our districts, especially I think Councilmember Minor and probably Councilmember Pine as well as Councilmember Fukunaga's districts, as well as all of our districts, is that, we have people who will maybe subdivide 2 lots, put them together to become one home, and then rent it out at very affordable costs, especially to immigrants who, they're just doing it it is not they're not the homeowner occupant, but they are kind of being benevolent and helping people out by, charging them less rent than they would in anywhere else. So, we don't also want to hurt those people, I guess. And if there's a way to maybe address that, if they are doing that, if there's a way to report it, I don't know, but certainly looking at the property values, I think would be helpful, because when you do subdivide and merge these lots, you wouldn't think of it, but you do have these medium income homes from anywhere from $700,000 to $1 million sometimes, depending on how many lots they put together, right? In any one of those districts. In Kalihi, I know that we have them, so if we could look at that, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Any further discussion? Objections? Thank you. The bill has been amended to a CD1. The chair then recommends that Bill 42 CD1 be reported out for second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, Bill 42, CD1 is reported out for second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Our final Bill 43, adding timeshare as a new general real property class. Budget Director? One, we do have a proposed CD1, and the amendments restores the existing subsection 8-7.1, amends the definition of fractional ownership on page 2, and corrects formatting and Ramsar errors. Okay. Director?
Gary Kurokawa, Deputy Director of Budget and Fiscal Services. Bill 43 is, again, another bill that is creating a new classification, a timeshare class. Currently, these units are part of the hotel resort classification. This bill would create a separate classification just for timeshares. I guess, like, Maui County has a separate timeshare class, and the reasoning that they had discussed with us about is that the timeshares maybe probably are not contributing as much to the TAT as the hotel resorts. I think the study was that they pay about a third of the cost, what regular hotels pay at TAT. And this would just separate and put them in a different class, separate from the hotels, and just, create a new classification.
Okay, any questions for the Director? Okay, thank you. Henry Perez.
Aloha, Henry Perez for the record. I'm here today representing ARDA Hawaii. ARDA Hawaii is a local chapter of the American Resort Development Association, the National Timeshare Trade Association, comprising of over 20 local members with 56 properties statewide, 12 on Oahu, including the Hilton Grand Vacations, Marriott Ko'olina, and Disney as well. ARDA Hawaii strongly opposes Bill 43, which proposes to create a separate timeshare classification within the real property tax category. A similar situation exists on Maui County, where the timeshares were removed from the hotel and resort classification in 2005 and designated as a separate classification. The only reason for separating timeshare from the hotel resort classification proposed is Bill 43 would be to assess timeshares at a higher rate than the hotel resort, where timeshare was removed from the hotel resort classification in 2005. It increased about 69% property taxes to them there. I also want to state that in other jurisdictions around the United States, they do not have a separate classification. So it's just Maui that currently has it. And also for the record, I'm also the general manager of the Hilton Grand Vacations here in Hawaii, which has 3 towers at the Hilton Hawaiian Village, Kalia, Lagoon, and Grand Waikiki, as well as our new property that's opening up on Beach Walk, Hokolani.
Members, any questions for Councilmember Pine?
But timeshares are very different from hotels. They provide, they have significant savings because they don't provide the same type of room service, same type of customer service that a hotel. Isn't that why there's this huge movement to move from hotels to timeshares in Hawaii, because it's a lot more affordable?
No, the services are still there. I mean, example, at the Village, a hotel guest and a timeshare guest use the same pool, use the same restaurants, get the same housekeeping, check in at a front desk, have valet parking. So it's really all the services that you would get at a hotel are in a timeshare, especially like a Marriott or a Hilton or a Disney. All those services are in place. There's food and beverage, there's restaurants, so the services are there.
Okay, so maybe in your situation, but I guess what I'm looking at, and maybe this doesn't relate to you, and maybe it's in its own category, is those new hotels that are going up that are only all timeshares.
Right, but they still do provide the services that you would have at a hotel. It's still that experience because they're really only here for a week. So they're experiencing the same situation that a guest would be, but what we're getting back is that they're getting back to becoming repeat customers to Hawaii, and they're going to be coming year after year. But the service levels that they expect are very similar to hotels. I mean, I've ran hotels as a general manager in Maui and Kauai and here, and the service levels are the same. When I create a budget for a timeshare, I'm creating almost the same budget that I would for a hotel with the same service levels.
So we've had in past hearings, we've heard from Local 5 that timeshares are actually reducing services, and so maybe they weren't talking about.
Right. Well, I think an example to that would be if it was Local 5 that they were talking, would be the housekeeping. In a hotel, you get daily housekeeping service. In a timeshare, you get what's called the midweek service. So you're getting the room cleaned twice during your stay rather than every day. So that reduces labor or workforce in that as well.
Oh, okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Thanks.
Councilmember Harimoto.
Thank you. Could you please clarify the issue of the transient accommodation tax? So do these timeshare units pay the TAT?
They do, and the way the formula was done for that is you take the maintenance fee in a typical unit. Could be anywhere between $1,000 and $1,500 for a one-bedroom. You divide that maintenance fee in half, and that's what you tax the TAT on a daily basis. So they are paying TAT, but the way the formula was driven was basically you take the maintenance fees, divide the maintenance fees in half. Let's say that number is $750. You take $750, multiply it times the current TAT rate, and that's your weekly TAT. And then we divide it on a 7-day interval, and it posts every night, just like a hotel would. So every night, when you check out of a timeshare, let's say you didn't have any expenses, you would have a bill that would show your TAT on a nightly basis. So it does.
Oh, okay.
It does there. Now, the 1/3 that was explained, I don't agree with that. I would say it's a little bit more than half of what you would get in a normal hotel, because remember, the hotel's paying it on the nightly rate. So basically, what we're doing is taking a maintenance fee, dividing it in half, and then dividing that by 7, and that's our nightly rate. So an example for Hilton, our nightly room rate would probably be about $150, $160 a night for a timeshare owner that already owns, where a hotel person that's staying at the Hilton might be paying $200 a night. So they're paying TAT on $200, where a timeshare owner is paying TAT on $160, $170.
Okay, so the bottom line, it is somewhat less than the full TAT, and it's apportioned by use.
Correct.
Okay, and so
So whoever is staying in the unit is paying the TAT.
okay, and typically how many owners do you have for each unit?
51.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But it is a little bit less, not much less than the regular hotel TAT.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Natalie Iwasa.
Thank you, Natalie Wassa, for the record. This is another one I have concerns about. I'm not quite sure what the impact will be to this, but, you know, we should be simplifying our system, and I think in this instance we're complicating it again. And I guess I just don't understand this no less than 60 days in a year. So basically, if I own a property with somebody else, and that person can use it the first 6 months, and I can use it another 6 months, then I would fall into this definition. And I guess I don't quite understand that part of it. But if that's the case, you know, one of the things that a good tax policy is that it's efficient. And that means that it does not interfere with the private economic decisions that people make. So if this is going to be a new classification, and if I had a property that fell into here, I would just rearrange things so that I don't meet this definition. And how does the administration know what properties even qualify for this? I just have a lot of questions on that. But I also wanted to, since this is the last real property tax bill, I wanted to mention a couple of other things. The other things we talked about in the commission were enforcement. You know, I think there are a lot of areas that came up during testimony during the commission hearings where enforcement of certain exemptions or compliance issues came up, and we need improvement in that area. And also, as I stated in the past, is collecting what is already due to the city. I think there are measures that you can put in place that will allow the city to collect those past due taxes, such as making it mandatory that when a property is sold, that the borough property taxes behind that property are paid at the time of sale, and also when permits are issued, collect any taxes that are due. So, thank you. Thank you for looking at this whole issue.
Any questions for Ms. Iwasa? Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on Bill 43?
Barbara Armentrout for the record. Again, I'm a member of Neighborhood Board 5, but I'm speaking as an individual. This timeshare, this is our visitor industry. A lot of them come over here on timeshares. They buy them on the mainland, and from what I understand, you can go any place for timeshares. It's going to make everybody go to the Caribbean and other places if they know they're going to have to pay more on their timeshare to come over here, because I know people that have timeshares on the mainland, and they're trying to sell their timeshares just for the fact that sometimes the maintenance fee is almost more than staying in the hotel. Like that gentleman says, well, the room would go for $200 a night and the timeshare is $150. It's not that much difference. You can get hotel rooms for cheaper than that. So I think it's going to affect the visitor industry regarding the timeshares. People coming over here, if you go to Hawaii, you have to pay this much more. That's going to affect their decision to come over here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Former Chair Todd Poe.
Hey, anytime I can cut off Todd Poe, I'll take it. Aloha, Chairman Kobayashi and members of the Budget Committee. I'm Daniel Donnell here today representing Hilton Grand Vacations. We are opposed to Bill 43. You have my written testimony. And really just want to make a couple points. One, timeshare properly belongs in the hotel and resort category. Really, the difference is a hotel person stays there and rents, a timeshare person owns. That's the only difference, and we really fail to see any logic for creating a unique treatment for this classification. And was pointed out previously by testifiers, really the discussion really should be on broadening the tax base and limiting distortions, economic distortions. It's really about sharing a burden, not looking to see who you can jam it to or get a little bit more out of. In today's newspaper, there was an editorial that kind of implied that timeshare owners are rich people who are investors who are offshore. They are not. If they were rich people, they'd buy a condominium themselves, a whole ownership condominium, and get, the residential property tax rate. So in summary, I'd like to point out that we really think this is misguided policy. I stated in my testimony and referenced this wise body back in 2007 passed a resolution when Todd Poe was chair, about policy, about how much do you want from businesses, how much do you want from the residential classes in property tax. And I really think that's where the discussion should be. And again, that reference is in my testimony. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Donnell? Thank you. And would you pull out the chair for former chair?
Oh, sure.
Thank you. Aloha.
Aloha.
Todd
Welcome
Poe
home.
with-
Welcome home.
Thank you. Todd Poe with no city title here. But I just want to throw in before I get into my official, just from a personal side, part of the hardest part of sitting here was not opining on everything when I used to get to. But I realized it was about 12 years ago that I started showing up to council hearings testifying about a landfill. And a few years after that, I ended up running for office. So I can promise you that's not going to happen as a evolution this time. But again, personally, I think we got it right before. We've tested all these different classifications, went back to basically two sets of classification, residential, non-residential, and I think that's right. I think it works. So some of these proposals, as I was sitting there listening about breaking up additional classifications, just still don't make sense to me. And to answer Councilmember Harimoto's question at one point about, well, how does that difference in cities' services work for an apartment property versus a duplex. The difference in the way that works is in valuation, right? Because the apartment with 40 units is going to be valued with 40 units on it, and therefore you're getting more tax from there. So the system takes care of itself by doing that. And so again, I hope that you guys, as you move through it, look at and realize that, at least my opinion, the residential, non-residential system works. That said, I am here representing Aulani, a Disney Resort and Spa. We are a mixed-use property. We have both hotel and timeshare at full build-out by the end of this year. We'll have 350 hotel rooms, 480 timeshare villas in operation. And so to, a little bit to Councilmember Pine's question, I can tell you too, it's the same thing. Our guests are getting the same thing, whether they are owners within the timeshare vacation club or hotel renters, but we even rent out our villas. And those people that are staying there as a rental are getting everyday hotel service or housekeeping service, and they're all experiencing the same thing. And so in this bill, I don't see the rationale for splitting this up, aside from, well, Maui does it, and we know why Maui does it. And it's, as Henry mentioned, it's the only place that does it. And so we don't see any distinction in the visitor, whether they're an owner or a renter. In the city services they use, especially, there is no difference. We may talk about housekeeping differences, but that has no impact on city services. So from a city service taxation standpoint, we certainly hope this doesn't move forward in splitting up this classification. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Chair Oppo? Councilmember Harimoto.
I can't resist. I have to ask you a question.
All righty.
And I don't mean to be fixated on this TAT, but since we heard from you and others that there's really no difference between hotels and timeshares, why is it then that the TAT is less for the timeshares? Do you know?
And I think, obviously, reality, it plays out as being less. Obviously, it's based on state statute, and I can't tell you the background of how the state came up with that formula, but I think it was trying to find a fair formula for a different visitor product in order to create state taxation that was equivalent to the TAT. I mean, I'd argue in this realm that should be irrelevant to, again, city services and the city taxation standpoint. But all that I can really answer to that is, it's how the state set it up. I mean, welcome to try to have that conversation on the state side as to whether there is a better way to set up that formula. But I look back at the commission report, and it talks about wanting fairness and reliability and stability, and that formula does that. And again, whether it's ultimately fair and exactly the same as a hotel room rate as a rental, reality is playing out that it's not. But again, I don't know how to address that within the form of what you guys are looking at here.
Okay, thank you. No, that's fair. But the only reason I bring it up is because I hear from testimony that timeshares and hotels are the same, but yet we're treating them differently for TAT. So that was my only point.
Okay.
So, thank
Fair.
you.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Great to see you all.
Yeah. We welcome you back anytime. Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify?
Chin James, I'll be quick. I wonder why we cannot have a paradigm shift. It seems that government is all about tax and spend, tax and spend. Why can't we have a paradigm shift and look inward and audit the whole thing, have a moratorium, audit the whole thing and see how we can save, how we can implement fiscal priorities, and how we can have common sense in our spending, because everyone is feeling so squeezed, from the bus use to the hotels to car registration to electric bills to everything. And I say this because for the past 4 years, I've been personally involved in an issue, as you know, and I just see so much waste and so much nonsensical spending. And it is my belief that if we were to demand careful vetting, and if we were to demand fiscal prudence, that we can all win, and that we don't have to keep tax and spending and squeeze blood out of turnips. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to testify?
Aloha, my name is Holly Huber, and I have some concerns about this bill. We have only a few classifications in Honolulu for property, and adding timeshare obviously adds complexity and perhaps inefficiency. I'm disappointed that the council members aren't provided with more details. I mean, this is a budget committee. It seems like maybe you'd be given some numbers. For example, like how many properties would be qualified as timeshares. And I appreciate my council member Fukunaga bringing that up. You really should get more detailed information on some of these bills and what the impact would be. One of my concerns is that our classifications aren't properly implemented in many cases. We have a full city block in Kaka'ako, 555 South Street, which has been used as a commercial parking lot for 20 years, and that's classified as residential, and it is charged residential property tax. You know, that's a commercial entity. It's being used as commercial property, and yet it's charged residential. We have golf courses which are being classified as preservation. They pay a very low property tax of only $570 per thousand, as opposed to, say, a hotel resort of $1240. You might think that the golf course connected to Turtle Bay Resort or the one connected to the Kahala Mandarin are classified as hotel resort. They're not. They're preservation. And that includes the clubhouses, the private clubhouses, the banquet facilities, the commercial restaurants. All of those pay only preservation property tax. We have nonprofits which get full exemptions, which are running expensive restaurants, and they are getting a full property tax exemption. I really think that before expanding the classifications, you might want to look at a little bit better implementation. And I hope that the Real Property Assessment Division can provide you with some more information on that. Mahalo.
What was that 555 parking lot?
555 South Street is a block in Kaka'ako. It's owned by Kamehameha Schools Bishop Estate. You will hear Real Property Assessment Division tell you that there is a condominium project that was filed over 20 years ago and promptly dismissed. They never were going to build that condominium. The developer went out of business. But because that one document has been filed about 555 South Street, our Real Property Assessment Division claims that it is a controlling document and that property is residential. Unfortunately, it's not residential. It's commercial. It's been used as a commercial parking lot for as long as I can remember, and there's still no new indication that there's going to be a condominium built there. So why are we giving such a great discount to Kamehameha Schools Bishop Estate, who can well afford to pay the commercial property rate on that, just based on what really appears to be not even a valid technicality? And that's just one of many, many examples. Mahalo.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Chair is going to recommend that Bill 43 be amended to the CD1 as discussed. Any discussion? Any objections? Okay, Bill 43 has been amended to a CD1. And we're trying to move all bills out for second reading, and then we'll go from there into more depth, especially as far as information from the department. So what passes today on second reading doesn't necessarily mean anything. We just may refine it, we may, whatever. So Chair's going to recommend that Bill 43, CD1, be reported out for second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Any discussion?
I hope that the department will provide us with the information before the full council meeting on August 7th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just second that.
Yeah. Any further discussion? Any objections? Thank you. Bill 43, amended to a CD1, is reported out for second reading and scheduling of a public hearing. Okay, there be no further business. Anyone have any business? There be no further business. We stand adjourned. Thank you, members, for sitting here so long.
Thank you.